All right.
There we
So,
go.
yes, we are live now. So, thank you everyone for joining us for another segment of Wednesdays with Wendy. My name is Wendy Garvin Mayo. I'm a nurse practitioner and the stress solution strategist. And today we have a special guest. We have Curt. Curt, thank you so much for being here. So, we've been talking about the 10 foundational elements of intentional transformation, how to become your best self. And it's based on a book by Max Story. And with it being the new year, I thought it would be a really good idea to really just talk about the 10 elements and how we can really apply it to our own lives, because who doesn't want to be their best selves, right? So I guess we can start off by you just kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and, your cancer caregiver journey.
That's okay. Well, my name's Curt Marlatt. Based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born and raised in the area down here. So we've been. It's an interesting journey. I retired about 3 years ago. I was information systems, IT systems consultant for a good number of years, specializing in, I guess, healthcare insurance industries, working for the various healthcare insurance companies around there. So I got a nodding acquaintance. My wife, we've been married, it will be 44 years this coming year in September. And she's a cancer survivor. Um, well, she's a registered nurse, oncology. Well, she worked for Oncology Nursing Society for a while and taught nursing. I'm also a college teacher. Since I retired, I got bored, so I started teaching. And anyway, let's see, this would have been 2014, I guess it was. My dad had been suffering from multiple myeloma for a few years and got real bad in 2014. I was on a contract in Columbus, and my wife tore her Achilles tendon, so I was coming home every weekend and usually stopping in to see my dad then. And I had some time between contracts during the summer, so I helped my brother take care of him. Long story short, we lost Dad at the end of October. Day before Thanksgiving, they found a lump in my wife's uterus as part of a regular routine exam. Right before Christmas, my brother-in-law wound up in the hospital, and preliminary diagnosis was ALS. Beginning of January, my wife had a hysterectomy, which turned out to be endometrial cancer. Okay, stage 3 endometrial cancer. She went through chemo, radiation in that order. The chemo really clobbered her. It was once every 3 weeks, and we'd get there about 8 o'clock in the morning and usually wouldn't get out until 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon because they had to give her a cocktail of drugs to make sure that she could tolerate the cocktail chemo. And it took her about 3 weeks to recover from that. So during this process, we lost my brother-in-law in June. And I kept tabs on what he was doing, helped out what I could, but I had my hands full with my own life. Okay. So that was in August, wrapped up with the radiation. We thought it was done. They said, you should be good. A year later, it came back. They recommended major surgery for it. And they suggested major surgery. My daughter suggested getting a second opinion. So we went out to Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia. The company my daughter worked for was a major fundraiser for them. Best decision we ever made. Wound up going out there. This was October, November timeframe out there. I remember because it was the election, 2016. Okay. And she had her major surgery, ran into complications, had a wound up sepsis at one point. Had a urostomy and a colostomy. Came home. She was going back there every other week from the end of December on through. She was going back there every other week for a treatment because the one ureter was getting clogged. She took a fall and started bleeding one time. We went out there, and it was the last week of March that year. 2017, the last week of March. And I thought it was going to be our usual 2-3 day trip. Came home July 1st. She was in the hospital 61 days.
Wow.
I was staying out there in an apartment that Fox Chase runs for it. We had housing out there for it. I was used, like I say, I was a systems consultant. I was used to traveling. I'd had a contract on Philadelphia, and our daughter lived about an hour away from the hospital. So I was familiar with the area. But during that process, she had a 14.5 hour surgery that reversed a colostomy, but it cost her kidney and a femoral bypass, fem bypass operation. She was on dialysis. Week, 5 days or so after that surgery, she was still in the ICU, started freaking out. They did a CT scan and found out that she had a perforated bowel, and they carpet bombed her with antibiotics and rushed her into surgery again. 2.5, 3 hours later, they pumped 2.5 liters of gunk out of her stomach. And she comes out. She was still on dialysis. She was on dialysis for 6 weeks until her remaining kidney rebooted itself, and then various rehabs and so forth. And like I said, we came home beginning of July, and she had off and on problems with recovery onto that. A year or so later, she decided she felt good enough to get a knee replacement surgery for a knee that had been bothering her since before all this started. Yeah, nothing's ever that simple. She got the knee replacement. A week later, her knee's dead cold. She's screaming in pain. I called 911, got her into the ambulance, got her to the local hospital where she'd had the knee surgery, and got her there at about 6:30. She was screaming. Doctor saw her at 8 o'clock. She was on the operating table at 10. And my son's best friend was the OR nurse at that one. That was her angel. Our son knew how she was doing before I did. So she came around from that, and she's recovering, spent the past year recovering from that, suffers various complications from the cancer and from the various surgeries that she had. She was involved in a study for something called LARS, lower anterior resection syndrome, which is it's a syndrome that you get when they reverse a colostomy on you. Causes irritable bowels and everything. She was part of a study onto that. And about 3 years ago, they had a consensus meeting right before publishing on it in Nice, France. And everybody had told us, when you're done with the cancer, you got to do something nice for yourself. You got to celebrate. So they invited her to this consensus thing. And she says, you want to go? I said, well, if we're going to France, we ain't going for a weekend. So we went out and we spent a little over 2 weeks in France.
Oh, wow.
Started off for a week in Nice, a couple of days traveling through the countryside, and then a week in Paris before we flew home. So celebrated onto that.
Wow, that's awesome.
And through all of this, I was the primary caregiver. Daughter's in Philadelphia, 300 miles away. Our son was here, and it started off, he was living with a girl, and they broke up. Then he was living with us. Then he met another girl, and they're living together now. So he was there. He had his own career to take care of. And our daughter's married. We have an 8-year-old granddaughter out there. So I was pretty much primary caregiver of it, and did not know about any of the caregiver support groups floating around. They had that one for the Cancer Caring Center. That was based out of Hillman Cancer Center here in Pittsburgh. And I knew about it. Unfortunately, they meet twice a month on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, second Tuesday and last Wednesday. But it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was working. So if I wasn't working, I was doing caregiving on her. And I went the whole realm of the caregiving. And through it all, I learned a good bit. I wound up doing stuff I never dreamed I'd wind up doing, honestly.
Yeah.
When we were at Fox Chase, they had one session about cancer, the different types of cancer. They had the different doctors. They had one on caregiving. They had some of the social workers, a couple of people that I knew there, the head of the nursing, and they thought it was going to be about, I make a distinction, support for the caregiver versus support of the caregiver. Support for the caregiver is American Cancer Society, the hospitals, Meals on Wheels, visiting nurses, that sort of thing. That's support for the caregiver. support of the caregiver is what we're doing tonight, and what we do with the different other support groups that we get down to there. And there was me and another guy, and his wife was another cancer patient there, and we started bouncing off of each other, heterodyning for this. And the look on the people's faces, the nurses and the social workers and everything, was basically, huh? Never dawned on them what we were talking about. Our emotional and psychological support group. I called it, I said we needed something, and I called it like a 12-step group for caregivers, sitting around and sharing your experience, strength, and hope, and talking, giving each other tips and ideas on stuff that you're not going to hear from the Cancer Society or from the social worker, okay? Stuff on how to deal with it. When what came up in one of our sessions a couple of weeks ago, when the cancer patient starts to freak out and gets an attitude, gets nasty, starts lashing out at it, and you're the target of opportunity. And you know damn well it's not personal, that it's the drugs talking, it's the cancer talking, okay? And you know they don't really mean it if they would think rationally for a while. Half the time their heads are off somewhere, God knows where. They're lashing out at you, and you can't take it personal. You have to detach from it and let it slide for you. But damn it, it still hurts.
Absolutely.
Still gets to you. And that's where these groups are so effective. This is a place where you can share that sort of stuff and unload. Then when the patients flare out, I mean, when she was in a hospital at one point, she started hallucinating puppy dogs. She saw puppy dogs running all over the place. But I can think of worse hallucinations, I'll tell you the truth. I remember telling the doctor one time she was having some good days in a row and starting to feel a little bit better. And the doctor came in, and he was one of the few doctors that understood something, and says, "How's she doing?" And I said, "She must be feeling better. She's picking on me again." And he's one of the few doctors that understood that as her husband, I knew how she was doing better than any of the nurses or any of the machines was going to tell you. You could do the vitals and everything, you can do the tests and everything, but emotionally and the way they're feeling, gut level feel, the spouse shares it with the doctors. Some of the doctors just aren't interested. Oh, you're only the husband, you don't count. I mean, that's not saying it in so many words, but that's the attitude you're picking up on. Okay? You get that kind of an attitude going. And the smart doctors listen to the spouse. The smart doctors say, "How's she doing?" and pay attention to it. Yes. And you get to know the nurses. I would go into their. I'm a social type of guy. I mean, obviously you can tell that I'm blathering a bit, but I like to help people. I like to help out. I've always been active. I've always been with different social groups and helpful groups and all that. And so when we're in the hospitals, I would go, and if she needed a glass of water or a towel or something, I'd run off and get it. I found out where the linen closet was. I found out where the supply closets were. I found out where the different stuff was under there. I'd take off, come in, and she'd say, "I need some ice water." And nurse said, "I'll get it." Or one of the aides, "No, I'll go run off and get it." "Oh, that's okay. We can do it." "No, I'll take care of it. This frees you guys up to do the important stuff. Passing the meds, taking the vitals and that sort of thing, stuff that I can't do." So I wound up going around with her whenever they were taking her down for the various tests and everything. Got to the point I was walking in a hall one day, and one of their transport guys comes back walking past and says, "Have they hired you yet?" I think they wanted to, and my wife wouldn't let them.
Yeah.
She wouldn't let them. But, I enjoyed doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was important to me because as a caregiver, it made me feel useful in the hospital. I was in there, I'd get into there 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't leave until she started falling asleep, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And then I'd go home, have dinner, whatever, take a walk. It made me feel useful, like I was contributing to her care in the hospital there, just by doing something as silly as going to get her a glass of water, some ice water or something like that, getting some milk or something onto there. Just doing something stupid like that made me feel useful, and that was important to me. thing, I guess, an emotional type of thing. It made me feel like I was important, like I was doing something, I
Yeah.
was contributing into that. When you come home, you're doing the stuff at home, taking care of her, taking care of the dogs, all of that. That's fine, well and good, but in the hospital, it's also important. Besides just sitting there and watching the TV or looking out the window, you feel like you're accomplishing something, like you're doing something.
Yeah, well, Kurt, I have to validate and let you know that you are important, and those
Yeah,
things you're
yeah,
doing were helpful and
yeah.
needed. So, I always say, cancer caregivers are really the backbone of healthcare and an essential part of the healthcare team, because when
Mhm.
that patient leaves the hospital or the office, you're home with that patient,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and your insight is invaluable, you
yeah.
know,
When you come home, you'll get the
valuable.
home care nurses coming in, and you're the one that's getting everything set up for the home care nurse to come in, and a lot of times getting the supplies ready,
Hmm.
getting things, making sure they're cleaned up,
Yeah.
and if they might need room to work on or what have you, uh, keeping the dogs out of the way or what have you onto that. So yeah, but during the course of all of this, I learned a couple of very valuable, very hard won lessons, difficult lessons
Mm.
onto that. Uh, well, for one thing, everybody has defense mechanisms.
Mhm.
One of my premier defense mechanisms is humor, if you haven't caught that so far. Wisecracks, bad puns, jokes. Uh, I, I deal with it with humor. I like to make people laugh. I like to laugh myself. There are worse defense mechanisms, seriously. Okay. Um, the other thing is taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
I like to stay in shape. I like to think that I'm in pretty fair shape myself onto that. Uh, with the COVID thing, I haven't been to the gym since August. I quit going in March, went for a week and a half in August, and haven't been there since. I haven't gone uh, ice skating yet this season because I don't want to go to the rink. You know, it's been too chilly around here to go for any long hikes or anything, and it's too cold for biking or anything like that. So, but ordinarily, I like to keep myself in pretty fair shape. When I was caregiving, on the other hand, I turned into a hermit. I
Mm.
was sitting there all the time, and if it was in the hospital, sitting there. If it was at home, I begrudged going out for groceries. Okay, everything was at home. I turned into a hermit onto that. It got to the point that I was losing it. Um, there was one point when we were in the hospital, my daughter threw me out of the hospital, literally. She told me to get the hell out of here and don't come back until dinner time. And this was in Philadelphia. So I went down Boathouse Row, watched the rowboats, went to the Rocky statue and the steps, and wandered around a little bit, sightseeing and everything, and did a little shopping, and then finally came home, back to the hospital onto that. But she literally threw me out because I needed a break.
Yeah.
Another time, another time we were at her house and I was staying here, my wife, and she dragged me off to a movie. She said, "We're going to a movie." And period. Doctor called me while we were in a movie, but she dragged me off to a movie because I needed a break. And my daughter's barely 5 foot tall, slightly over 100 pounds, and she can intimidate a Marine.
Kurt,
She's got an attitude. Woo-hoo, okay.
how did how did you ask for help as a caregiver? I know, in our community, we're talking about beliefs that hold you back from asking for help. Were you able to ask for help, or was that really
It
difficult?
was a, it was difficult. It was
Hmm.
difficult. I come from a culture, uh, baby boomer 50s, 60s era. Okay. The John Wayne, James Bond, macho bullshit type of image. Growing up, my father was a mill worker, foreman in the mill. I worked in the mill one summer. I was the first one in the family to go, in the direct family, to go to college instead of going to the mill. Okay. When I graduated high school, I had class today. I was teaching at community college. I told my students, when I graduated high school, we had three choices: community college, Pitt or Penn State, something like that, the mill, or Vietnam. I
Mm.
wanted Penn State at that point. I mean, that was your choices for the kid from Mon Valley Steel Country. Okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
in that era, you grew up with the attitude, the man, you took care of everybody else. They didn't take care of you, you took care of them. You did for everybody else before you did for yourself. Uh, asking for help, aside from asking a buddy to help you move something, bring over your truck and move something or something like that. Um, I guess, how would I put it? A show of weakness, okay,
Hmm.
something like that. And that cultural barrier was real tough for me to break through. Okay,
Hmm.
I think a lot of caregivers, even more recent generation caregivers, you still have that barrier onto that. You've been putting out some of the posts that I can identify with. Some of the barriers of you don't want to ask for help, you don't want to impose on anybody. You can
Hmm.
handle it yourself. If you're asking for help, that implies you're not good enough. That
Hmm.
you're not capable of dealing with it. But you need the help. Now, asking for help from the medical profession is one thing. Asking for help from the doctors or the nurses and medical things, that's one thing. Asking for help on the day to day, working around the house, asking for help uh, for taking care of the caregiver and everything, getting the groceries, cleaning the house, doing the laundry, what have you, that sort of stuff. That's real difficult for guys like me. That's the type of situation that, whoops, wrong direction there. That's the type of situation where, why are you asking for help? You should be able to do this. Okay,
Hmm.
that type of thing. And this is the psychological. I was fortunate in that I was able to break through that to a certain extent, although it took me a while. Wasn't at the beginning. Okay, when we went to Fox Chase, my daughter said, "You can stay with us whenever you need to," and I hesitated to impose on her.
Hmm.
At one point, we were staying with her, and things went south a little bit, and we wound up being there a little over a month, which was about 3 weeks too long. Okay, and it started causing a stress and a tensions with it, with me taking care of my wife and her having, I guess at that time, 4-year-old daughter, and both of them working. Started to put a little bit of strain on the relationship that only the past couple of years has been resolved. It put a strain in there for a while. Okay, but to start with, I hated to impose onto them. I didn't want to take advantage of them. Didn't want to impose onto them. I'd rather stay in a hotel, or preferably in my travel trailer out there,
Hmm.
rather than dump on impose onto them. Back here, my son was living with us. When he moved out, uh, he'd stop over to see how we were doing about once a week or so. He lives about 45 minutes from, well, he lives about 10 minutes from here, but at one point he lived about a half hour, 45 minutes. And he'd stop in about once a week or so just to see how we were doing. And the only time I'd call him was when I needed an extra set of arms or an extra strong strength to move something. Okay. As far as taking care of his mother, very difficult to ask and difficult for her. Okay. So for some reason, I think, not to be sexual or anything about this or gender specific, but women seem to have an easier time as caregivers asking for that kind of help than men do.
Hmm.
How I broke through it was necessity. I found out, I wound up that I had to ask for help, that I couldn't do it myself. I was pushing too hard, working, taking care of her, taking care of everything else. I was pushing too hard. Okay. So I'm necessitated getting it. This type of help in these sessions, I wish I would have known about them sooner, to take an hour to talk to people about it. Uh, I take care of myself. I call it switching off my brain every evening. I go for a walk, take a fine cigar, some cool jazz on the earbuds, and take a walk for 20 minutes or a half hour. Basically, switch off my brain,
Yeah.
just to recharge and reset on that. But there's a limit to how much that helps, especially when you get to the physical aspects of it, and you get to the things that not really medical, but not really normal, cleaning, the taking care of them, and then you get the nerves on it, uh, when they're sleeping too late, because they, and something's bothering them. They start to feel ill. Is this another panic? Do I have to call the 911 or what have you? And do I call 911, or is she good enough that I can throw her in a car and take her to the emergency room?
Hmm.
With the COVID, one night she had to go to the emergency room, and it was late at night. got her to the emergency room about 11 o'clock or so. And this was back in October. And couldn't let, no, this was last May, last May. Um, couldn't go in with her. So the guys at the ER said, go park in the parking lot, rooftop parking lot across the street. We'll call you and let you know what's happening. That was around 11:30. 6:30, I call the emergency room to find out what's going on. They were just admitting her.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
sitting in the car. I was sitting in a car all night waiting for them to call. Didn't want to go home because if
Of
she had to
course.
go home or they needed something, I wanted to be there. So I sat in the car all night.
Oh my.
And it's a little Subaru. It wasn't even my big SUV where I could stretch out. It was a little Subaru. So I'm dozing off 20 minutes, half hour to pop and coming around. And every time there's a noise coming through, what's that? What's that?
Yeah.
I
Wow.
mean, we've done some crazy stunts along the line. I've done some craziness as part of the thing. One of my pet sayings, I used to give it out to the people I worked with in IT, and it has been my mantra through the caregiver stuff. It's be flexible. That way you don't get bent out of shape.
I love that.
I
I
mean, come
love
on,
that.
as a caregiver, that is essential
Hmm.
because just because things are going nice now doesn't mean what it's going to be like a half hour from now.
Right.
Okay? Anything can happen when you turn around on it. And meanwhile, while you're doing the caregiver with the cancer, life happens.
Hmm.
Normal stuff goes on, your normal crises.
Hmm.
I used to say we'd be going down here with the cancer treatments and her surgeries and her complications, and I feel like I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And it turned out to be the headlight of the train, and I'm a coyote in a Roadrunner cartoon. I even had that for my Facebook for a while. The coyote standing there with a sign, not again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you understand how that is.
Yes. Yes. How did you keep hope alive during your journey?
Uh, how did I keep hope alive during my journey? Optimism,
Mhm.
okay? Uh, beating the odds up. Well, I know statistics, part of my job, part of my training, and there's two ways of looking at statistics. Statistics are an indicator, okay? You got the charts and everything, but then within them, each individual discrete point is unique individual. So on the one hand, the odds say this, and you can look at the odds and say, well, I've got this percentage of a chance. On the other hand, you can quote Han Solo and say, never quote me the odds. Never tell me the odds. So, because everyone's discrete, it's yes or no. It's either going to work or it's not going to work, you know? And you
Right.
come to a surgery and they say, well, you've got a 55% chance of doing good. No, your chances of doing good are dependent on the hands of the surgeon and your own strength and will to live. It's a discrete thing. Don't tell me about the last 100 people that worked on, you know? Tell me
Mhm.
about this one, you know?
Mhm.
Versus, okay, the last 100 people and they've all been fantastic successes. Yeah, you know what you're doing. I have some confidence in you, you know? So you have a little bit of optimism into there onto this. You start talking to the doctors and they're telling you the odds of this and that. And I'm looking at the positive side of it. Okay. Keeping the optimism going, keeping the hope. Yeah, there were some bleak times into there. She's had some more bleak times than I have. One of the things is she was having a rough time of it a while back, and I told her, hang into there, that I got to hang on to her for at least the next 6 or 7 years. And well, how come? Because if we hit 50 years of marriage, I'll be the fourth generation in my family to hit 50. My parents, my
Wow.
grandparents, my great grandparents, I'll be the fourth generation. And
Wow.
it's documented. We got newspaper articles for it.
That's
My brother
amazing.
does at his house. So,
That is
so
amazing.
now we've got to shoot for something. And that's the other thing I found out. It helps if you have a goal. Okay, they kept telling us when your cancer treatment's done, do something nice for yourself. When they're sick to their stomach during the chemo routines, when they're feeling depressed and everything. Talk about what you're going to do when all this is over. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Paris? Do you want to go to Hawaii? Cruise to Alaska or the Caribbean, what have you? Okay. What would you like to do and start planning? One, it takes your mind off of what's going on. Two, it gives you something to look forward to. You know, you
Yeah.
have something to look forward to. Yeah, have some a goal, a target at the end of that. So you have the uh, you have the optimism into there, and it takes your mind off the day to day dealing with keeping track of the medicines,
Mm-hmm.
keeping track of them being sick, holding them up while they're being sick, or taking care of them when they get incontinent, or making sure that they get to bed, helping to mind the wound, helping to rebandage wounds onto that, minor wound care, making keeping track of the appointments and that sort of thing. Takes your mind off of this stuff. Gives you something to look
Yeah.
forward to onto that. Gives you something to look at as a goal. That's one way that we kept the hope alive and the optimism onto that. And you're talking about the vision looking forward. That's one thing about it. That's a vision that you have for when you're done with this. And especially if they start thinking, well, I'm never going to get this. This is as good as I'm going to get. It's never going to be any better. I can't stand this. Start hearing things like that. I just wish it was all over. I should have never got that surgery. That type of thing. Find something like for us 50th, okay, 50th anniversary, looking forward to that. Somebody else, it might be around the world cruise type of thing when you get done with this around the world cruise type of situation, or a new house relocating
Mm-hmm.
that. We like to travel. We have a 30-foot travel trailer, and we like to go around onto that. Now I've been on the ground in all 50 states at one point or another. Not
How?
not too much foreign travel, but between my job and vacations, uh, I've been on the ground, not just the airports, but actually in the states, in all 50 states.
It's
So,
amazing.
and there's a good number of them that I'd like to go back to, stuff I still haven't seen onto that. And we do that year to year. Well, not last year, but we do that as a on a year to year basis. Where do you want to go next? You know,
Yeah,
so
I think
it
that's so important. What you're saying is that, even though, you are a cancer caregiver, you still have to keep your vision, right? Your goal, keep your eye on the prize, keep yourself motivated, the optimism. Those are some great, great tips. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Yeah, you get this, you get the optimism onto there. When you're looking at a vision, some people think, well, vision, there's obviously the eyeballs, okay, but some people are going, well, what kind of a vision are you talking about? Is it the vision of surviving the cancer? I look at it more than that. You go, surviving the cancer is good for itself, but when you survive the cancer, you still have the rest of your life to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's going to be a new normal. She hates me using that term, but it's a new normal. You're going to have changes to the physiology, changes to the body. And in some cases, like with her, she's got a urostomy. She's dealing with this Lar syndrome onto that. Other people have a colostomy or they have a pacemaker or something, and other people have regular dialysis or something. You've got a new normal, but
Mm-hmm.
you adjust to it, you adapt to it. When we were traveling with our travel trailer, we knew folks that traveled with oxygen generators. They have oxygen generators in the RV, okay, and they'd carry their supplies with them, and they fatigue easily, have to lay down. You plan your trips around that. You can't do an all day 8 hour hike. You take the breaks, you plan what you can onto that. And occasionally rein them in. They get a little over ambitious. My wife gets a little over ambitious as to what she's capable of and what she can and cannot do, you know. So in my situation, I'm trying to figure out how to, I'm trying to stay in the middle of the sign. But for my situation, for me, I have to rein myself in too. Find yourself, you want to do too much. You want to take on too much. You want to overstress yourself. That I've had to pay attention to it, which is weird because in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I was in the type of profession where if you put in less than six, you didn't start counting overtime until you passed 60 hours in a week. Okay.
Oh.
I mean, 50 hours was a normal week with no problem. You pass 60 hours before you start thinking serious overtime onto that. Most people were putting in 10, 12-hour days and some on the weekends, and trying to raise a family with that made it tough. I'd be putting in 8, 9-hour days, and I'd be getting in there 7:30 in the morning and leaving 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. And that was a full day for me, and occasional Saturdays being on call 24/7, 365. Because I used to sleep with a stack of, back in the days before you could log in from home, I used to sleep with a stack of printouts next to the bed. If the phone rang, I could try to troubleshoot right then and there, you know. So you think I would know burnout and the symptoms of burnout. I recognize it in somebody else. It's what somebody once said, you never hear your own best advice. Okay. You can, somebody's burning out and you got to do this, you got to do that. And when it comes to you, it's all out the window. You know?
Yeah, that's why it's important to take the time to really check in with yourself, you know.
Exactly.
Not just as people. We have to check in with ourselves and really evaluate, what do we need, you know, and really feed that need or that hole or, you know, that desire.
Yeah, every so often, and this is the hardest thing in the world for me, but every so often you have to take a day and do absolutely nothing and do it very, very well.
Yes, that is great advice. That is great advice. Yes.
It's very, very hard.
Yes.
You'd be surprised. For me, it's really hard. I was surprised at how hard it was to do nothing because I'm an active person. I firmly believe that when you stop moving, you start dying. So, okay, and I'm not ready to start dying yet. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to hit the century mark and then look for the next century.
Yeah.
But, everybody's got to have a target somewhere.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up here, do you have any last words of wisdom for our audience who's watching tonight?
If I have to sum it up, like I said, besides the idea of stay flexible so you don't get bent out of shape, and the other thing would be take care of yourself. You can't take care of the patient. You can't take care of your significant other or whatever. You can't take care of the cancer survivor if you're not taking care of yourself. It doesn't do any good if you wind up in the next hospital bed over and you're sharing a room in the hospital. Okay. And that you run a very real risk on it, not from the infection or anything like that, but from collapsing. You got to take care of yourself. And like you said, check in with yourself and pay attention. So you got to take care of yourself, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically as well. It doesn't help anybody if you freak out or go crawl into a bottle or anything like that. That doesn't do anybody any good. If you're going to be of any use to the person you're taking care of, the person you're giving the care to, you have to care for yourself on all levels of it. And you have to stay flexible because things will change like nothing flat. And I hope I didn't bore anybody this evening too bad with all my babbling or ideas under there. I mean, I belong to a number of care groups and everything. And the one group that I belong to has a saying, take what you like and leave the rest. So if something I've said resonates with somebody or gives somebody a good idea, then we're both ahead of the game.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, on that note, we are going to end. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you agreeing to join me tonight. And maybe we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I didn't know. I thought it was going to be another Zoom type situation. And then when I found out it was going to be one-on-one talking to a blind audience out there, I'm going, okay, this could be fun.
Yeah, no, this was great. And I would love to have you back.
Oh, yeah, I'd enjoy it. I'd enjoy it. And getting some folks out there, or maybe get a panel type of discussion, get 2 or 3 of us that we can bounce ideas off of each other.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's plan it. So all of you watching, we have some viewers watching. When we put the poll out to come on and join us, please check yes so we can send you the link and you can be right here with us. We'll definitely have panel discussion, roundtable discussions. I love it. So we'll do that. But thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you for asking me, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, bye everyone.